Hi everyone, how are you going? Look, I just thought I'd take a couple of minutes to record a short video for you about assessment and what is required from you to submit. So the task itself has two parts to it. So there is a part A and a part B. It does say here that part A should be submitted at least a week prior to part B for feedback, but I would suggest that's actually probably not necessary. The assessment itself is satisfactory or unsatisfactory anyway, so even if you were found to be sort of lacking in an area, all I would do would be give you some feedback and just give you an opportunity to resubmit that part. So unless you really have some questions about a particular technology or something in part A that you would like some feedback on, it's really not necessary to submit it as a separate document. So I'm really happy for you guys to just keep working through both parts, part A, and then work off part A for part B. So they do actually fold into each other. It is a scaffolded assessment. What I'm asking for in part A is a simple table. Basically, you need to choose 5 technologies that you want to analyze, have a little bit of an overview of. 3 of those technologies need to be CSU supported. So that means they're ones that are either currently integrated into the CSU systems or something that, we have bought a license for or something like that. So that includes any of the tools as part of I2. And again, I would suggest that rather than looking at Interact 2 as a whole, you actually break that down into some of the tools that are in there, say the discussion boards, the announcements, the multiple choice question options, anything like that. Look at the parts as opposed to the whole. And then you can choose, now you don't have to, but 2 of those technologies can be external technologies if you want them to be. So maybe technologies that you do use that CSU don't necessarily have a license to or aren't an integrated part of our current system, but that are technologies that you really enjoy using and that do in fact improve the engagement for your students. So I know a lot of people use things like Kahoot or Mentimeter as a little bit of a polling and Q&A, and they're fairly widely used throughout the university. So if that's something you want to look at, that's fine. All 5 of the technologies can be CSU current technologies, but you just have the option there for 2 of them to be, think a little bit out of the box if that's something that you wanted to do. So again, just in a table, don't overthink how much information you put in this. All I'm looking for is an overview of the technology. So, just the key points. What does it do? What is it? What does it do? So the next one is affordances of the technology. Now, some people, a lot of people kind of, what is affordances? What do you mean by that? Well, what I mean is how does what that technology does, how does it support your students? So it's not just about what does it do, but it's then about in what way can that be used to support your students. So often the example I use is, let's say you want to talk about Zoom as a technology, and so the overview of that, just the key aspects of it is it's a recording software. You can use chat, you can use video, you can use polls, you can use breakout rooms, and it can be recorded so that people can watch it again. That's just some of the functionality of Zoom, the basic sort of overview. Taking that, what are the affordances of that? So maybe one of the affordances of the fact that you can record a Zoom presentation is that then students who are studying in the distance space and may not have been able to attend the online, the synchronous presentation can still participate by watching it back in a time that's more appropriate for them. So that's how it's supporting your students, especially if your students are learning online. They're going to have other competing issues like work and family and things like that. They may not be able to make the presentation time that you've got. You guys know yourself, you're not able to make all of my presentation time. So I record it so that you still have access to that information, but at a time that's more suitable for you. So I hope that helps explain it. The function of Zoom and some of the overview and the key features is that you can record presentations, you can use chat, you can use polls. The affordance of that, though, then means that, students who are unable to attend synchronously can still participate asynchronously. So I hope that helps. Suitability for your cohort and context. Look, this can be as simple as just, yes, Zoom is suitable for my online cohort. From what you tell me about the overview and the affordances, I can see that saying yes, it's suitable is correct. Or you could say, suitable for my online cohort, less suitable for a face-to-face cohort. And I'm not saying that about Zoom, I'm saying that about any technology. So I guess what I'm saying is don't overthink it. You'll have put some thought into the overview and the affordances, as in how it supports your students. So when you look at the suitability, it really can just be as simple as kind of like, yes because or no because. And then of course the elements of the online learning model that it's most suited to. And again, you don't have to pick all that apply, just maybe pick the strongest one that applies, whether that's, teacher presence or enabling student-to-student interaction or enabling, whatever that is. Just pick one or two of the ones that sort of apply the most. So again, this is dot points in a table. I don't want you to overthink it too much. I just want to see that you're considering how the technology can support your current student cohort. That's really all I want to see from you. So don't overthink that too much. Part B is then picking one of those technologies that you have, just done an analysis of. And in the 1,000 words, so the 1,000 words really only applies to Part B. In Part A, as I said, it's a table with dot points. Don't overthink it. Just make sure you've got enough information in there for me to understand where you're coming from. So in no more than 1,000 words, I want you to propose the design of an online learning activity using one of the technologies. So it can be either one of the CSU supported ones or the other technologies as well. We probably would prefer if it was one that can be easily integrated into the CSU system. So, as part of Part A, you might have a look, in fact, at an external technology that you think is really wonderful. And maybe it does do a really great job of, what it was designed to do. But if your students need to set up an account in order to access it, maybe it's not suitable. If your students need to pay for an account to be able to access a particular technology, it's definitely not suitable. So I guess that's when I say that it can be easily integrated into the CSU systems. It doesn't have to already be a part of the CSU system, but you really need to think about, student accessibility as part of whether or not it is suitable for your cohort. So as part of this, I want you to think about something that in fact is easily accessible by your students. So it needs to explicitly address a learning need of your students as well. And as part of the marking criteria, it does ask you to identify what that is. So look, I'm just looking for a 1,000 word report, essay, however I guess you're most comfortable presenting that to me. I don't mind too much how that comes to me. So, but I think the best thing that you can probably do, so making sure that you do consider the context, justification for the learning activities, methods for evaluation, a discussion about student engagement, and then the reflection. I think the best thing you can do is make sure that you come down here and have a look at the marking criteria. So as part of this, there are 4 criteria. So probably a great thing to do would be, if you have 1,000 words for the assessment, there are 4 criteria. So try and stick to a 250 word limit roughly for each. And if you think about it in those terms, it's not that difficult to kind of get to that. If you want to give yourself a little bit of guidance, I'm happy if you want to put the criteria in as headings. So the first one would be about, it's around about what is the context, your learning context and your student cohort. So, context and cohort could be one of your headings. And then it's the justification for your chosen learning activity. Then it could be evaluation and then maybe reflection. So as part of this first one, the satisfactory criteria requires you to give me a description of your learning context. Are you undergraduate, postgraduate? Who are your students? And then what are their learning needs? So, are they mature age students that are coming back into study for the first time and you need to be able to support them to do that? Are they, students who are potentially studying in the online space for the first time, and so you need to ensure that you create engaging online activities? What is your learning context? Who are your students? And from that, what is then a learning need of your students? That will then be the justification for why you've chosen a particular technology. So you've identified a learning need of your students, and now you're going to talk about how you've developed an activity and a particular technology that you use in order to support the development of that activity, to support your students with that particular learning need. That could be around assessment, it could be around content, it could be just a general kind of, learning outcome of the subject. You can pick whether your students need help with assessment or whether they need help to meet a learning outcome. Whatever it is, that's fine. The evaluation method. So I've said that you need to pick 3. So this is proposed evaluation methods. You do not have to design this activity, implement the activity, then evaluate the activity. That's not what I'm asking for. I want you to consider what the design is, and as part of any activity or experience that you design for your students, you should always consider how you're going to evaluate the effectiveness of that activity. Now that could be as simple as, if you run a Zoom session, it could be as simple as having a few poll questions at the end of that Zoom session around the effectiveness of the session. Was this useful? Would you like me to run another one? It could be as simple as that. You do need to connect one of the evaluation methods to the SES, so go and have a look at some of the questions and identify which question in the SES is most relevant for your activity. And it could be as simple as, maybe you wanted to send out a survey. Don't underestimate even, as a teacher, seeing students do better at a particular assessment than students previously have done because you implemented an activity to support them. So, your powers of observation as an experienced lecturer is also a really valid method of evaluating whether or not an activity has been effective. And then the final thing is reflection. So I want you to reflect on the development of the activity. So what worked, what didn't, what would you do differently next time? And again, that doesn't necessarily mean you have had to have implemented it. You might have found some issues even in the development of it, in finding the right technology. You may have implemented it and found that, in fact, none of your students could work out how to use the technology for reasons that you hadn't considered prior. So just, think about those questions, what worked, what didn't, what would you change for next time? It's just sort of 3 easy questions to kind of help guide what your reflection is. It's about, it's about you kind of thinking about, in future practice, would I do anything differently, or did it go really well and I'm very happy and I'd run it exactly the same as next time? Or is it, look, I could make a few changes, I could make a few tweaks, and that would make it a much better activity for my students. So, as I said, 4 criteria, 250 words each. Feel free to put in headings if that makes sense, if that makes more sense to you. I don't mind how you present this to me, but just sort of make sure that you are answering each of the criteria. And yeah, have a look at what the satisfactory standard for that is. As I said though, the module itself is a satisfactory, unsatisfactory. So if there's a point where you don't meet the satisfactory component of the assessment, what I will do is give you a lot of feedback. I will send it back to you and I will ask you just to rework and then resubmit that particular element of this. So again, as I've said, this subject isn't about, failing people. It is about making sure that you do in fact have the required skills and knowledge to pass the subject and meet the learning outcomes. So I hope that has been helpful for you. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you do have any further questions about that, and I'll run a couple more sessions again for you soon, so keep an eye on the announcements for that. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.